Good afternoon, everyone. Caresoft would like to welcome you to our Win Magic webinar, Secure Online Access with No User Action, Achieving Zero Trust. At this time, I would like to introduce our speakers for today. T. Winhu, CEO of WinMagic, and Imran Shak, Product Management Leader at Dell Technologies. Gentlemen, the floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you, everybody. My name is T. I am the CEO and founder of WinMagic. We have developed this encryption software for more than 25 years, and then more than 5 years we have worked on this Magic Endpoint solution. I spent a lot of time on this Magic Endpoint solution, not only for you, but for many people. But for you today, I spent a lot of time to make sure the presentation is compelling, and I hope you will like them. So please enjoy the presentation. It's like a magic show, I hope. And with me, we have Imran.
Hello, everyone. Imran here from Dell Technologies. I am part of a high-tech product management team here, and my focus is endpoint security. I am always researching cybersecurity technologies and excited to be here with the WinMagic team. Thank you.
Okay. First, I would like to show you a video. It's probably not usual, but let's see. Thank you. Yeah.
For endpoint access, MagicEndpoint offers MFA for Windows login and also at pre-boot for full disk encryption. Here, we're showcasing the phone with Bluetooth. MagicEndpoint supports phone using the network as well, but Bluetooth is preferred. In addition, we support USB token, smart card, TPM, PIN, pre-boot networking, and perhaps biometrics in the future, as we did in the past. After pre-boot authentication, MagicEndpoint single sign-ons into Windows. The same multi-factor authentication is used for Windows and pre-boot. Obviously, it is more secure than no pre-boot authentication. Upon system start, MagicEndpoint creates a secure, persistent connection to the server. This connection not only allows for continuous verification and control, it serves as the trusted channel like the phone number on the back of a bank card. We'll call it the trusted channel, as opposed to the data channel that the client uses to access online accounts. The most impactful concept of MagicEndpoint is probably the user on trusted device, in real-time identity. Its key is available only on the device and only after user logs in the trusted endpoint and can prove to the server that the authentic user is using the authentic endpoint in real time. By default, MagicEndpoint uses the TPM, and thus the key is unshared, uncopyable. It's not only device-bound, it's user and device-bound passkeys. When the user opens a browser to access Office 365, the MagicEndpoint IDP server passes the authentication request without user action. Note that this is not single sign-on. Unlike the common, casual single sign-on, the MagicEndpoint IDP verifies explicitly user, device, and security posture for each individual authentication request, just transparently to the user. Leveraging the trusted channel, MagicEndpoint can verify if the user intended to use a specific service provider in the first place. This audit log shows that the user has started the browser to request services from this service provider. If the user on the trusted device did not initiate this request, we can alert the system at the first attempt of the non-trusted device. Additionally, any authentication requiring user verification is handled in the background by the device without user action. MagicEndpoint leverages FIDO's signature counter concept. Since the key is unique, unshared, and not synchronized across multiple devices, it operates on a strict one server, one client basis. This allows MagicEndpoint to enforce stricter rules and immediately detect out-of-sequence transactions. This added layer of security ensures that even if an attacker were to gain access to the private key, potentially through advanced methods such as quantum computing, it would be quickly identified and mitigated. In this instance, the user logs into Cisco VPN with no user action. MagicEndpoint automatically handles secure authentication using federated protocols. This streamlined experience can also be extended to VPNs using Radius. Here, you see that MagicEndpoint deletes the user on device key when the user logs off. The user is no longer on the device. With the best practice of no user action already present, we can modify the IDP policy for Salesforce requiring explicit MFA authentication on top of no user action. We do this because businesses may still require an extra layer of security and require users to use MFA to log into specific online applications. In this example, the user attempts to log into Salesforce and is prompted for authentication, completing the process smoothly and securely. Here on MagicEndpoint device, you can see this in action. But in the event the user leaves the endpoint unattended, an unauthorized user cannot get access. The concept of no user action also applies to non-federated authentication. Here, we demonstrate SSH access to servers. The need for robust machine identity security is rapidly expanding as enterprises increasingly rely on cloud access and SSH security key-based authentication. Managing this complexity requires systems to identify which of thousands of users can use which of thousands of endpoints to access which of thousands of servers, and being able to instantly revoke access if a user leaves or a machine is compromised. This is where MagicEndpoint's management of users, endpoints, and servers truly shines, potentially expanding beyond traditional identity and access management boundaries. RDP doesn't support federated authentication and normally requires the involvement of Windows credential provider. MagicEndpoint successfully integrates credential provider and offers no user action for secure RDP. You can see in the demo that MagicEndpoint is used even within the RDP machine and gets all access with no user action. With MagicEndpoint, our concept of endpoint access gives access to everything else, applies also to legacy applications still using username and password. By securely managing access in the background, MagicEndpoint provides no user action across managed applications like Gmail setup with username and password only. Whether accessing online accounts or local resources like a network share folder, MagicEndpoint enables one secure endpoint login, providing convenient, password-free access to all authorized applications. There is no need to log into an additional password manager. The bottom left endpoint transmits live updates, all dynamically reported to the MagicEndpoint enterprise server. Here, we see the logged-in user is using BLE mobile phone to log in the endpoint device. And here, we can see the information about the user logged on the endpoint device, such as device name, status of the device, and the username that logged into the device. When the user locks the device, the user performs a lock the device command. Now, we see the user status change to locked. Then, the user unlocks the device. The endpoint dynamically reported back to MagicEndpoint server, and the user status is updated to unlocked. We can also see the events of the user logging off and a new user logging and being updated in real time. As observed, with MagicEndpoint, we achieve real-time synchronization without the need for data polling. This ensures security remains current at all times with event-driven updates. You can clearly see, this is what we do. Endpoint management is fundamental to secure online access. It is understandable that an endpoint protection solution should or can have all this real-time update. Now, we can see here that all this intelligence gives much more accurate information for online access. Traditional online solutions may not have even endpoint presence and does not even know that the user is not using the endpoint or even if the endpoint is powered off. Taking care of the endpoint gives you all this information, and you use this for secure online access. MagicEndpoint works on non-Windows OS as well. Here is on Mac iOS. In scenarios where unmanaged endpoints are used, we fall back to out-of-band authentication, similar to other solutions. To be clear, it cannot match the comprehensive security of a managed endpoint, where MagicEndpoint ensures seamless, persistent validation tied directly to the device and user. With an IT security policy in place, all endpoint devices are required to be fully encrypted. If a device is not fully encrypted, the user will not be able to log into online applications on this device. To show this policy in action, we manually decrypt the device. Since the endpoint has a persistent connection with the IDP server, this action is updated in real time with an event drive methodology without polling. When the user tries to log in to Office 365 again, the access is denied.
Okay, so it's a long video. I hope you like it. So I will try to present the video now. The concept. Sorry. Normally we present the concept first, and then we show, the video. But it turns out for us that the concept is probably somewhat too novel, so that it's easier for the audience to see the video, and then I'm trying now to explain the concept. So we start with the full encryption. Okay? So we all have an endpoint, and we take care of the user logging the endpoint with MFA, ideally at OS login and also at pre-boot authentication. In our full disk encryption solution, we have a consistent connection between the server to the endpoint to manage the endpoint, to verify and help user log in the endpoint. So the user may not be registered to the endpoint. So our server will say, okay, this is a new user. I send out the key file with the user, and the user will have to take a phone to log into the endpoint. So we have a persistent connection to manage the endpoint. That's what we have been doing for over 25 years with everything around disk encryption and file encryption. But now when we look at the online access and MagicEndpoint, we see that the endpoint goes to a service provider, to online account. The user has to use the endpoint, the user cannot go directly. So the endpoint goes to it. And that's where IAM, PAM, IGA, and all kind of online access solution come into place. And there's many identities, even the directory on-prem and SaaS can be several. So there are thousands or hundreds of thousands of identities on the corporate resources. Thinking about external identity going through the internet to access corporate resources, there are user and there's non-human account as well. All of them have their identity and they use some machine to access online resources. It's very complex identity fabric. But when we look at the identity from outside accessing the enterprise resources, I mean, the main reason people do this is probably to verify identity from outside. Okay? And we believe that verifying that identity is not that complex. It's just a user on application on a device. And because of what we do, we will verify those identity directly on the source, meaning on the endpoint. So we create a uniquely verifiable identity, meaning the identity which only the endpoint has, and only when the user using the endpoint. So that is the user on device identity. And that is unbreakable verification. Like we said in the presentation, it's not only a device-bound passkey, it's a user-bound and device-bound passkey. And in theory, nobody can attack it. This is, cryptography withstand attack for years and so on. So we use the endpoint presence to build this key to make sure the server know that the endpoint accessing the server is the authentic endpoint with the authentic user on it, with just one kind of public key operation. Beyond the identity idea, we also think about the continuously verified user and device. So as we said before, we have a persistent connection to verify the user all the time, even with starting when the endpoint powers off. Okay? And so we continuously verify managing user and device. You see, the whole one like SSO, but do you understand, do you know SSO is the opposite of continuous verification? SSO means you try to ease users' burden. So user do only once, you verify once, and then you try to use that time to allow access to other applications. But that is not very secure. Okay? In our solution, we verify each individual authentication, and because we don't involve user, it can be done very securely with no user action. There are more to talk about that, but basically with these two big ideas, we believe that MagicEndpoint offers more secure solution than anything on the market there today, with the best possible user experience. There's no user action, no password, no MFA, no MFA fatigue, no password reset when it comes to online authentication. So we believe that the industry talk about identity first. But if you ask the fundamental question, which identity should you authenticate? You will see that unlike the normal understanding, it's not the user. You should not verify the user. You should verify the user on the device in real time. I just think about it just now, like today, that in some form, we use our technology to make a user a part of the device. So instead of AI to make the device human, we do the concept that human is a part of device, and with that, everything is much more secure than before. So I will think about it more as we go along. And so with this, I think we finished the presentation. We will go to the interview question.
All right, great video and the concept overview there. Good to see you, by the way. And I have prepared some interesting topics for us to go over today, and a few great questions. So if you're ready, we can dive right in.
Thank you, Imran. Yes, I'm ready.
All right, so let's talk about MagicEndpoint, more specifically the multi-factor authentication. So question is, does MagicEndpoint use multi-factor authentication?
This is a good question for us, actually, because cyber insurance, the industry in general are requiring MFA for online access, more secure than just password. And we are proposing no user action, no user action. So how can we be secure? So the answer is actually yes. The direct answer is yes. We use MFA for online access and for endpoint access. That's what we have been doing for, again, over 20 years, with most MFA for Windows login and even for pre-boot authentication. But for online access, we take that MFA, the MFA user used for endpoint login, we add to it the endpoint. The endpoint is one of the what you have of MFA. So we use that endpoint as additional MFA, and we have MFA to have online access. So basically, we satisfy the requirement of MFA. But you see, the indirect question is, for me, much more interesting. The idea is we propose endpoint access, give access to everything else. It means beyond endpoint access, everything else, it means owned access, you do most of the time today, in the day. The online access should be done without user action, without user having to take care of password, taking out MFA and anything at all. And that is what users should see when it comes to MFA. So for MFA, that is very important for the user, because the current solution, they use the phone for endpoint access and for online access. So there's no concept of no MFA. But if you think of what we have, and what we think is that for own application, you can get to the stage that there's no user action at all beyond endpoint access. So if your solution doesn't offer you no user action for online access, just say no. That is where the industry may be going.
So your solution can guard against all these headline-making account takeover cyber attacks with no user action, no password, no MFA fatigue. I mean, this is kind of unheard of. Did I get that right?
Exactly, that is the point. That's why I'm so excited, as you may see. But we have been deploying endpoint protection for 25 years. So we believe that using the endpoint as opposed to the phone, as opposed to anything else, is the game-changing, revolutionary solution for the future of cybersecurity. We believe that is the future of cybersecurity. Yes.
So let's talk about the buzzword of the year, zero trust, right? You mentioned that WinMagic delivers zero trust in a unique way. Can you explain how it's different from some of the other solutions out there?
Yeah, be careful what you ask for. I will spend a lot of time on this. I love this idea. See, zero trust say several things. We try to say one statement we believe the most concrete one about zero trust. The statement is actually from the US government zero trust paper, Executive Order 14028. It says it requires continual verification of user and device for each application and transaction. Okay? So you can see that it is kind of impossible. How can you verify the user for each transaction which happen in sub-seconds? In a second, there are many transactions. How can you verify the user? Which user can do so many things? And yet we are unique because we believe that we solve all of that problem without user action.
So I must say that's impressive. How do you manage to do that?
We use magic. Oh, no, okay, so sorry, just kidding. We don't use magic. We use scientific. Actually, there's 3 science ideas I would like to focus on, okay? Using the statement, I like to focus on how do we solve verifying user and device? And then I want to focus on the second one is about how we can do that continuously. And the third one is how can we do that and protect even each transaction? So let's talk about verification of user and device, or verification first. You know, people may not think too much about it, but verification should be accurate, because if it's not accurate, it's not very good. And then it should be resilient against attack. Okay? And so the industry do come to the idea that for online security, there's only one method approved, but it's the public key-based authentication. Everything else, push notification and so on, are considered obsolete and cannot be used anymore. So verification for online has to be public key-based authentication. And then when you think about verify user and device, yes, you see, the current solution uses a phone, but the phone is at best represent the user and not the device. So that is not the best solution. We come back to our fundamental question. Which identity should you verify in the first place? You know, we said before, public key is the method you have to use. But user cannot do public key, so what can you do? Well, you bind the user to the device, and the device has a capability. And again, the user become a part of this new device. And so you have the identity user on device, and we have a cryptographic key, which is not unbreakable. Okay? So the correct solution for this idea about verifying user and device is the identity user on device in real time. Okay? And you see, I don't see anybody saying that until now. And for me, that is the correct solution. And because when you have a technological, a scientifically correct solution, the outcome is very different from the case you don't have it. I mentioned before, when you talk about SSO, so people think about users, so that's why you have to think about SSO. In our case, because you verify the device, you can do it every second. User doesn't have to know anything, and yet we verify much more secure than SSO. Concretely, I claim that most of the attack today, all the attack, infamous attack today, would have not been successful if you just verified the device correctly. I think the attacker doesn't go and steal your device. They sit somewhere, maybe in another country, and they don't steal your device. But if the solution is verify the device correctly, it prevents all the attack until now. So my point just look at the identity first solution and ask the question, which identity we should verify that may cause the world to have much better cybersecurity than today.
So that's interesting. I can see that your identity user on device in real time uniquely addresses the zero trust requirement of verifying user and device in one go with no fuss and no user action. So I wonder, what else in this zero trust interpretation do you handle uniquely?
Right, I mentioned three. So the second one is continuous. Let's verify or analyze the word continuous. Okay, in order to do continuously, you have to have a channel so that the server can verify the user and the device continuously. With a channel, it can communicate anytime it wants. So that is a persistent connection channel. And then furthermore, better than polling the channel, the endpoint should automatically in real time update the server, so you can continuously verify without polling, without performance degradation, and actually you don't do it continuously anymore. You do it always. You in real time instead of polling. Okay? So in any case, you need a persistent connection, a channel that. And I wonder, I don't see any other solution in the world except our, which have a persistent connection between the server and the endpoint. I mean, the endpoint normally belongs to the enterprise. Why don't you use the endpoint and have that to have a much better solution? Do you know of any solution who has a persistent connection between the server and the endpoint?
Right, not that I'm aware of today.
And actually, there's much more than that. Thinking about that channel and the word continuously. So, people always think about continuously mean the server authenticate the client, and then it should continue to verify afterward. That is post login. But imagine, why not pre-login? You can verify the endpoint once it turns on, when it's power on. And you can verify the endpoint and the user once the user log in the endpoint, before they access any online access, anything. So you verify both user and the endpoint long before it access any online services. It's much harder to attack. It's much more resilient for attacker to do. See, we have been working for the endpoint for over 25 years. So that's why we have this persistent connection, and it gives us the best intelligence to grant access, to know more about user and device. It happened to be, very good in this context and this line. Okay, there's even more about this persistent connection. When think about the bank card, in the back of the bank card you have a phone number. The phone number is the way the banking industry used to prevent identity spoofing. It says, if somebody calls you and say, I am the bank, you should not trust that random connection. You have to call the phone number in the back of the bank card to verify you have the trusted channel and you talk to the right person. Okay? Applying that trusted channel on cybersecurity is this persistent connection. So you can ask the question, the banking is a very well-known, highly proven method of the trusted channel. Why doesn't the industry apply it to the cybersecurity? So we apply that, and we believe that is the future of cybersecurity, because it allows you much stronger security than before with no user action beyond endpoint login. Yeah.
So I like the comparison with the phone number in the back of the bank card. Yes, it's the main recommendation the banks ask us to follow to avoid fraud, but all this work to use the endpoint to help online access solution is somewhat complex than other solutions which use the phone app and don't require installing software on the endpoint. Is it even worth it?
I think you may have answered that question already. So is it worth it? Yeah, how how much struggle, how much problem do people have with online access? So we only say, okay, so you only need to install something on the endpoint. We take care of the rest. And installing the endpoint is not optimal. I understand. The server, AI, everything can be done better on the cloud. But in order to really solve the problem, which the industry could not solve for many, many years, you have to probably use the endpoint for that. So yes, for that, you don't have to have MFA fatigue anymore. I think it's more than worth it. Yeah.
So we have covered two key ideas in zero trust requirements: identity user on device for verifying user on device, and trusted channel for continuous verification. What's the third key idea?
Yes, thank you. The third is about the transaction. Okay. So the transaction happens several times in a second. Okay. And zero trust say you have to protect each transaction. So again, my question from the beginning is, how can you verify the user for each transaction? Okay. So the fact is, nobody can authenticate the user in subsequence, but we can protect that. But in order to do that, we will have to go and analyze into something deeper to the extent that for online access, you can consider them as machine to machine. You don't need authentication, you just need encryption, but that is a bit much longer than today. So maybe I give another presentation in the future about this very interesting thing. Please join us later on, but not today. Thank you.
So switching gears towards my last topic today, it's about artificial intelligence based threats, right? How can you protect against AI threats such as deepfakes and AI-driven social engineering attacks?
My favorite question as well, even it's new. Yeah? AI-driven attacks primarily exploit user vulnerability, like trust, voice, facial recognition, writing style, and so on, so on. But you see, our concept from the ground up say that the endpoint can perform online authentication much better than user, to the extent that there's no more user action. So with no user action, there's nothing to phish, there's nothing for AI to attack. So there's no user action, no user involvement, no users vigilance needed, and so AI cannot do anything with that. So I would say MagicEndpoint is inherently secure against AI threats. And so we don't do anything much about that, but we are secure against them. Maybe it's good to know that we use cryptography as foundation, and cryptography, it remains secure against AI threat today.
So WinMagic doesn't have anything to guard against AI threats, like some other vendors offer solutions against deepfakes.
Right. We see everybody jump on AI bandwagon and so on, and we have to say, we don't do it. Wow, because we don't need any of that. Actually, I want to say this is a testament of the robustness of our technology, of the correctness of our technology, in scientifically. We don't make it a reliable on user if you don't have to. And that, as in result, makes it inherently secure. We do use AI. We add AI to do more other things and so on. But the other idea is AI, for me, can be used better for attack than to defense. And cryptography is better used for defense than to attack. And so we use cryptography first and AI as a supplementary layer.
Great. Well, that's all the questions I had for today. I certainly enjoyed adding to my security knowledge, and I hope the audience learns a great deal as well. I will now hand it back to Bryn. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. We have had a few questions come in using the Q&A box. So T, if you want to answer some of these.
Yes. Yeah.
The first question we received is MagicEndpoint an IAM solution or a password manager?
Yeah, we go from endpoint encryption into probably the so-called IAM solution. take care of federated authentication, take care of the future solution on online authentication. And so we try to do IAM with support SaaS and on-prem. But basically, people still have to use password and username password for application which don't go into federated authentication. And because we be on the endpoint as well, so we don't need always the IDP server to take care of federated authentication. We can implement the password manager functionality on the endpoint as well, so that we can cover both the older legacy application and the newer one with federated authentication. So yeah, we provide both because we can do both beautifully with the endpoint. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Let's see. All right. How does MagicEndpoint handle authentication for unmanaged endpoints? For example, BYID.
Yeah, BYOD. Okay. So bring your own device. Yes, as you can see, everything we do, most of the thing we do rely on the endpoint capability of the crypto chip on the endpoint and so on. And so we use that as main weapon. But as we mentioned, if it's BYODs, then we have to do solution using probably the phone mainly without the endpoint, our presence on the endpoint. But I think the good news is that the industry is going into bringing more security into the endpoint. Passkey initiative is, for example, a good thing from Google, Microsoft, and Apple to bring the cryptographic authentication right into the device, built in and so on. And we believe that our solution, also based on the cryptographic device of the thing, can use some of those features and implement so that our solution can be done mostly on most unmanaged endpoints in the future, because the built-in capability of the endpoint by the OS vendor allow us to do more sooner, maybe very soon than later. So yes, today we have to use a phone, but in the very near future, we believe that it can go toward no user action even on unmanaged endpoints.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I would like to thank our participants today, as well as T and Imran, for being with us. We hope the information you received during this webinar has been helpful to you and your organization.